Hello back. We are discussing International Women's Day in 2010. We have talked about what is happening in Iran, what is happening abroad outside of Iran, what the Worker Communist Party of Iran is planning for 8th of March. And we have also talked just now about the Manifesto of Liberation of Women. Now, Fariborz, let's talk a bit about what is actually the significance of the women's movement in Iran. What can they achieve?
The significance, or I think one significance of the women's movement in Iran is in the international aspect.
In what way?
Look, women's movement internationally, they are still fighting against domestic violence and violence against women. That's a key sort of theme in liberation of women internationally, and rightful and justifiable sort of demands. When you have that imposed by state, it becomes a different category effectively, and people are perceived as that different category. The most extreme version of violence against women, it's been meted out by the Islamic regime in Iran. They've actually codified and turned it into law violence against women. The fact that a man could treat his woman violently, it's acceptable. The fact that if there is sex out of marriage, people are put to death. The fact, the way that women are treated, young girls are treated physically, violently by the state and security forces for just deciding how they want to dress, and that's been codified in law. You have extreme version of violence against women in Iran, and women's movement in Iran, by actually opposing the Islamic regime, we're opposing a huge violence that is being meted out on daily basis, and is confronting that. So that's, if anybody wants to reduce violence against women internationally, they need to help to bring an end the most violent regime and organized machinery of violence against women anywhere, historically, and that's in Iran, and people need to support, and there's a huge movement to get rid of this violence, and people need to support it. This is only one aspect of the Islamic regime. Sexual apartheid, inequality, misogyny, all aspects of public life in Iran by design, and it's been designed against women. If you want slightest liberation, forget about equal wages, so to speak, not to forget about it, but the extent of inequality in Iran is amazing, not because it's inherent in Iranian society, but actually being imposed on all of the Iranian society from above by organized criminals, which is Islamic, religious Islamic groups who have taken over power, state machinery, and they impose it on women in Iran. So that's it. So if anybody wants to defend women's right anywhere, they need to actually see that how important it is to end this, and also there is a huge movement, a popular women's movement in Iran who are leading a revolution, and they need to be supported, and that's very important. And that's one aspect of it, just on ethical basis, on a dimension of it. The other aspect, and I think it is the fact that by end of Islamic regime, the life of millions of women in Middle East immediately will change, because the political Islamic movement will weaken immediately. The political Islamic movement started in Iran and will be buried in Iran, and that's, people need to recognize this. By this government being overthrown by revolutionary women in Iran, which is led by women, it's an interesting sort of concept, which is led by young women in Iran, will bring an end or significantly weaken the political Islamic movement, and actually helps the life of thousands and upon thousands of women in Europe as well. In the Islamic ridden communities of Europe, women are enslaved effectively as a consequence of Islamic regime being in power in Iran. Political Islamic movement not only undermines the rights of people in Middle East, Iran, Middle East, and Islamic ridden society, actually is a force, a reactionary force, which supports all the reactionary movements everywhere. In Europe as well, and in America, you'll see the link between the political Islamic movements and the right-wing misogynist groups in this. And actually, by Islamic groups spearheading undermining of women's rights in European societies, by dividing the society, by actually bringing different rights and claiming different rights and breaking up the universality of human rights. By actually doing that, they're actually giving support and power to the reactionary movements in European societies. So I think victory of women's movement in Iran would automatically would actually strengthen women's right everywhere.
So, for example, Saudi Arabia, how would that affect women in Saudi Arabia who have a similar bad situation?
Yeah, you see, for many years, people are hanging on to different sections of the the government in hoping that a woman could be a drive. Immediately, by the fact that women a revolutionary movement in Iran overthrows the Islamic regime, nobody could actually stop the Saudi woman demanding their rights. Nobody could stop the Iraqi woman demanding their rights and actually say, look, it's possible, we want exactly the same rights like the woman in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Iraq, in Palestine. When the Islamic regime destroyed any semblance of revolutionary movement in that country and destroyed actually national liberation movement in Palestine, and has pushed away the whole question of right of Palestinians to rule, would be turned into anti-Semitic Islamic movement, and actually would start. It creates an environment that people could start rebuilding the rights movement for a better future, and that's the international significance of this movement and needs to be supported.
Thank you. So this was the program TV International on International Women's Day in 2010. We hope that everybody, the women in Iran and the women and men, of course, everywhere in the world will have a very successful and glorious International Women's Day. Thank you for joining us. You can see the address of our blog where you can read the Manifesto of Women's Liberation and the statement of WPI for 8th of March. You will see our email, so please do write us. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, bye-bye.